Welcome to She Makes Art for the Money. This is the podcast where creativity meets cash flow. I'm Tanya.
And I'm Ivel. We are two design obsessed friends who met at RISD, built careers in the creative industry, and decided it was time to stop whispering about the money part.
Because let's be honest, we did not go to art school to starve. We went to make beautiful things and to make a living.
This show is all about what it takes to build a creative life that's fulfilling, sustainable, and yes, profitable.
But first, let's take it back to where it all started. The late 90s, think grunge, boy bands, and bamboo earrings. Ivel and Tawnya met, and the ridiculousness and art school hijinks ensued.
Oh my gosh, look at us like little babies.
There's so many cute photos and fun memories. I mean, the future of design is right there in a wig and a top hat. So many good memories and so many good stories, but let's dig in.
Okay, Tanya, I have some questions now that I have your attention. What is your art for the money story? How did you get started as a creative?
Well, after school finished, we, as you remember, headed straight to New York and got internships/first jobs that paid nothing, but really allowed us to just dive into the industry, working for a print studio. And honestly, it was amazing and crazy at the same time. Where we worked, how we worked, just super innocent and learning and broke. That's how we dove in. And then from there, I mean, New York is amazing. You have so many opportunities, so many places that you can work and try new things. It's a crash course. Really, it's like grad school, but on speed. From print studio work to small roles at freelancing for lots of different companies to working at Ralph Lauren, moving into management there. And honestly, from there, it's just been this amazing ride.
Was there a point like early in your career where you thought, you know what, I love being the designer, I love working with a team. Is there something that you went through that you thought you could be a creative leader?
I mean, I had some amazing leaders that I had an opportunity to work with, and seeing them, the way they work, the growth that you got to get at that leadership level, it made it really appealing. Plus, I liked the idea of making more money.
You do make more money being the lead. What's the one myth about being an artist or a designer that you feel like you've been fighting your whole career?
I think one of the big myths about artists and designers is that artists and designers aren't smart. They're not good at organizing. They're not good at being strategic. They're not good at leading effectively. And while there are some artists and designers that don't enjoy that aren't good at it, we are a broad range of talents, just like any field where there's strengths and things that we're not so good at.
Yeah, totally. That's something I feel like all the time. Um, and then what made you want to start a podcast about creativity and money?
Well, we've talked about this in other upcoming episodes, but one of the things that I think is really key for so many people that have not had a chance to really explore that artistic side of themselves is to understand that there are so many careers, there are so many jobs, lucrative ones in the design and art fields that and ways to make a living as an artist that so many people just don't know about. Going to school at RISD, I had the opportunity to meet people that had never had any experience with the different ways to be an artist or designer, and people who were very experienced, people that came from really struggle backgrounds and people that came from really privileged backgrounds. And the one thing that I will say is that folks from privileged backgrounds have an understanding and really just a comfort level with art and design that a lot of people that didn't grow up with that privilege don't. You just know what you can do with design and ultimately the vast number of careers that you can have and ways you can make money. I mean, everything is designed, every single thing from this podcast application and platform to the microphone that we're using to the paper or stationary kind of notebook I'm jotting notes on. And there's designers that design it. There's artists and leaders that help make it happen. There's people that technically help construct it. There's so many jobs. And ultimately, it's a field where Um, Women and people of color are vastly underrepresented. So I think for me, there's really this passion about broadening what options there are for people and really helping them live their best lives and live their dreams. So many people dream of being artists and
Mhm.
designers or are creative and never get to live it because they're worried about money.
Exactly. I totally agree with all that.
What do you think?
What do I think? I think, well, for me, growing up so close to New York City, I definitely had a lot of exposure to working artists, but it always seemed like an unattainable thing to do. It seemed like if you came from money, you can kind of get out of like the corporate world or the regular 9 to 5 and live in this Soho loft. And, it was just something I always admired. And my mom was a nanny in a loft where there was all these artists that lived there, and so I would go sometimes after school to hang out there, and it was about 4 floors of, artists who had taken over a warehouse building, and most of them were none of them were people of color. A lot of them came from really nice upbringing, so they had that kind of, uh what do you say? They had a little bit of
The
a
comfort
safety net.
level?
They had a comfort level, they had a safety net, so if they didn't make it, if they couldn't pay their rent, they could ask mom or dad for something. But I still remember the smell of walking into these lofts. They smelled like paint and wood, and there's some of them were so crowded. You were walking through, like, an aisle full of canvases, and I thought, "God, I wish I can do this." Like, just be one of these rich hippies who can
Carefree.
paint all day and get into galleries, and they go to poetry readings and they snap their fingers. And so I know this was something that seemed like there are people in my neighborhood who live like this. Can I be one of these people, or do I need to be working a 9 to 5? Like, how can I find a way to do both? And for me, going to art school for college was the only option I had. I just was not a great student. I didn't care about school. I went to a terrible high school, but I went to a half day art school. And one of my teachers is one of these kind of Soho guys who grew up, privileged guy who grew up like that, but he got to live in a loft. His daughter slept in the elevator shaft. They had this very bohemian lifestyle. And I was like, how can I do that, but still not be starving?
And hopefully not have your children sleeping in an elevator
I know.
shaft.
Well, she slept in an elevator shaft, but then they had a second house up in the Catskills. So, it's like that.
High and low.
High and low, yeah. Not that he was, like, oozing money, but he still had the option to have 2 houses where I grew up and a rented apartment in the project. You know, there's different, aspects of, choosing to be poor and then just being poor. But, I just felt like it was out there, that was just something I wanted to do. And so when I got to art school, it seemed like all those barriers were just kind of set aside. There were kids there who did come from money, who were able to pay for all the art supplies they needed. And then people who were just there on scholarship, who were taking out loans, who were barely making it. And I felt like that was very inspirational to be in a place like that where it's just depending on you, not so much your status, not so much what you look like. All those things are attributes that you need going forward. But at least for those 4 years, it was those barriers were broken. I felt like, okay, I can have a creative life. I don't have to be an accountant, which is nothing wrong with being an accountant. Um, but I don't want to do that for a living. And I've been really fortunate not to have to do that for a living. When thinking about this podcast, this is where I was like, let's talk to the friends and people that we know and people who are willing to be on our podcast. Well, it's like, how you do it? How do you make money making art, being creative? And so we've been pretty fortunate to have a good amount of people let us know they can do it.
Yeah. Really giving us the blueprint, if you will,
Hmm.
how to have a more fulfilling life ultimately, right? I mean, when you think about how many people are out there working jobs that they just are like doing what they have to do
Hmm.
and how unfulfilled or unfulfilling that can be, if you can do something you really love and do it well, I mean, how much better is your life gonna be? And how much better is design gonna be? How much better is art gonna be? And how much better is our I mean, not to get too into it, but how much better is our country and our world gonna be if we really tap into all of the potential talent
Hmm.
and really leverage the amazing power that artists and designers have to, like, really just push our world forward. That's my vision for
It's good to have a vision.
We're
It's
gonna
good to have
change
a
the
plan.
world with this podcast. We wanted this to be the podcast that existed when we were starting out, where people really talk openly about the process of being creative without the shame or mystique. These are the questions, this is the stuff that we couldn't ask our parents, and not many people we knew growing up would be able to answer. So we are pulling back the curtain and showcasing and sharing because I guess because we would have liked it. So I have a question for you, Yvel. Was there a moment where you realized I can actually make money doing this?
Was there a moment? Well, I wouldn't say there was a moment, but there was a series of events. Let's just put it that way. It kind of started in high school. I went to a half day art high school in Jersey City, New Jersey that had a great budget. And one of my teachers was like, "Hey, there's a job at the museum, local museum. Would you like to work there after school?" And of course, because I needed the money. And so I worked at the Jersey City Art Museum for about 3 of the 4 years of my high school. And it was great. It was just, I'd go in, sometimes just tidy up, sometimes watch the galleries, sometimes help the curator put things up. I got to see what museum work was like. There was just people who were writers, there were people who were, curators, installers. There were, artists coming in and out. And then also just seeing people from the city as well come in, and it was a very out there museum, like for being in Jersey City in the 90s. So people who normally would not be interested in art would come in, and it kind of got people thinking. And so that was one moment I was like, I could work in an art field. I may not be a famous artist, but maybe I can work in a museum, in the offices.
Uh-huh.
And then just after college, just meeting with other alumni, that's what really kind of spurred my career. Our first job was through an alumni, and a lot of freelance jobs after that. And just really thinking like, okay, you can actually make good money. Like one of the most fun jobs I had was working at Gap in the textile design department. And basically I was just coloring and drawing all day. It was on the computer, but it was all the same things that you would be doing on, with your pencil and your gouache paint, but just on the computer. And I thought, well, CAD design is really something that I really like doing. And so it's just a bunch of little tiny things that just made me just kind of get into the wheel of like, okay, this is where I'm going to be spending most of the time in my career.
Yeah. When you think about your identity, do you feel like anything about your identity shows up in your creative work?
I do. So I've worked a bunch of different creative jobs. I was an apparel designer. I did sunglasses for a little while, and now I'm working on furniture and children's toys. And I tend to love color. And I tend to love the small details, whether it's, with my furniture right now, it's the actual piece of furniture, but the packaging that it comes in and how it's going to be displayed in a room. With sunglasses, you would think it's just a frame, but I just love bold shapes, bright colors, because it is just a tiny accessory that can just pop your face. And in apparel design, even though I've worked for past 20 years in apparel design and so much of the style has changed, I just love all the small details that make it just feel, even if it's not an expensive garment, just the tiny bits of luxury, whether it's some kind of lining or just or a nice trim or something like that, where I feel like maybe you can't afford a $200 jacket, but at $70, you're going to get a little bit more bang.
You're
And
gonna
so
get something special.
you gotta get something special, and I feel like my identity is a little bit in there because, I grew up not being able to afford things, but I did like the nicer things. If it was a really good quality fabric or if it was a really cool print, even if it was just in a small section of it, I feel like that kind of shows my creativity in my professional life. When I'm doing fine art for myself, I'm all over the place. Yeah. Kinda
What
like my hair.
No, oh my gosh, look, we have had our hair journeys. The journeys of hair, we could have a whole separate podcast about that.
Yeah, yeah.
She's a hot mess and no money helps.
She makes curl for the money.
She
She
makes
spends
she
money on
makes
the
it straight
curls.
for the money.
Yeah.
Money helps her to make it straight. I don't know.
Oh, so much money on straightening my hair.
Yeah. Well, what excites you about making this podcast together?
Well, I mean, how fun to, like, be able to hang out with my best friend on camera. But also, these are the questions I've been wanting to ask a lot of people. I was a freelancer for a long time, and then I was a stay-at-home mom for almost 15 years, so I wasn't working. And getting back into the industry was hard because not only did I skip what felt like a generation of income, I left at one point and then I came back and people were making all this money. Then I went back down. And so I didn't know what even to like ask for a salary. And I was just looking for work and I just really was just curious of like, how did anybody get here? How did you become a creative director or design director or even just a designer? I felt like I was just so behind, staying home with my kids, which was great. But when you're trying to break it back in the field, it was hard. And I had an interview with a company. They were looking for a men's swimwear designer, and I had done women's swimwear before. So I go to this interview, and I hit it off great with the guy. He seemed really familiar. We had a great interview, but I could tell I wasn't really a good candidate for that. I had never done menswear, and there's plenty of people out there who could do it. So 2 weeks go by, I don't hear from him. So I just emailed him and I was like, I'm probably not fit for this role, but I want to ask him just some questions. I just wanted to know, as a friend, could you really tell me what I need to work on? And he was honest. He was brutally honest. He was like, your CADs are old. I basically took out my portfolio from 15 years ago and printed it out and put it into plastic sheets. Because when I was interviewing back in the day, that's what you did. You had a book. And he's like, you need to have a website, or it has to be digital. And he's like, and you're charging too much. He was like, thanks for asking me these questions because a lot of times people don't, but also, as a friend. And I remember him putting that in there as a friend. I should be telling you these things, even though
Yeah,
I met
yeah.
him once. And I thought, yeah, it's right. I feel like as artists, as creatives, as designers, we need to help each other out because in the end of the day, we all could be friends. There is this like bind that we have. I feel like making this podcast, being able to ask people, really, what do you do for a living? What do you earn? How'd you make it happen? It's going to be helpful for other people who are maybe in a similar situation as I was, or graduating school, or wanting to change careers, or in their career and just are curious.
I love that. I love this, like, idea that we are your friends. We are we are your friends, and listen to your friends, okay? We're gonna tell you some things. How you gotta do it if you wanna get out there. We may not get you to the top, but we're gonna at least get you on the road. And
Yeah.
so that's what we want this podcast to be. We want it to be the information, the advice, the friendship, the love, the sisterly guidance that we really know you need to get out there, and where we can really talk openly about the business of being creative without the shame or mystique. Just get into it. Get into it.
So pause again. We need to show this. Just in case anyone thinks that we got it all together, here are some behind the scene clips from when we first started getting started. And cue the hot mess.
Podcast time! Man. Oh, man. Oh, some of it is brutal. Some of it is very sweet.
It is. I mean, we got to travel. Like, that's already pretty cool.
Yes, and so I think oh, yeah, this is like Sonoma, San Francisco, Paris. I mean, we've gone some great places, all for you people. We are giving so
I'm in
that you can
Valentine.
benefit.
We could have gone to Pittsburgh.
Maybe we'll go to Pittsburgh for season 2. Okay, so what is one design or product you're still proud of years later?
Ooh, that's a good one. Okay. So I do have a t-shirt up in my attic that when I first started working at Billabong many moons ago, I was a t-shirt designer. And then I eventually evolved to be a denim and outerwear designer. Um, but there was a time we were just kind of making all over patterns and just kind of making fun t-shirts. And I was like, let's all take pictures of each other and make it like a Warhol. And so, being super artsy fartsy, I took pictures of all my coworkers and we made them about 1 inch wide, 1 inch tall, and black and white. And we printed it on a shirt and literally put that in our line. And I still have it. And I look back at these photos. This was almost 20 years ago, and I'm still friends with everybody there, close friends. And it's just so funny to think that possibly our faces were scattered around all these different surf shops. I think it probably sold about 15 to 20,000 units. And so, for a while, people were wearing a random shirt that said Billabong on it with our faces on there. I think I was like this. I think I did like a whole like holding on to the chin kind of pose, and I had like kind of put it in my toss pile because I was getting rid of things and my mom grabbed it and she basically being a mom saved a lot of my clothes that I had designed. And when I was cleaning out her things, I thought, oh, she saved it. And it's just so cute to see some of my friends in their very early 20s,
Moms are
on
so good at that. My mom, like, she saved everything too. When you think about money, because that's a big part of what we're talking about with this podcast, are there any money lessons that you learned along the way? Hard lessons, good lessons?
Definitely, I was always shy to ask for a raise. And I always went in when I went for a new job asking for less than what, when I did the research of what the average pay was, I asked for less. Especially when I was re-entering the workforce after being out for, close to 15 years. I went on Glassdoor, looked at what is the average salary for this job in this area, and I went 5,000 less. And I think, and eventually I caught up to it, but I think it doesn't really fare well for me or for the person after me, because now it's like saying Hispanic stay-at-home mom is cost less than maybe someone who's not in that situation. And so I definitely regret doing that. I should have just kind of asked for, what the going salary was at the time, or maybe a little bit more because I had more experience, not feel like I had to be a value because I was coming in from a different situation. Because it wasn't like I wasn't doing anything for those 15 years. I just wasn't working a 9 to 5. So I do regret doing that because it takes a year or two to catch up to what the salary was. Um, but then again, because I had been burned before of asking too much.
There's a lot of talent out there, and so sometimes it's hard to know where to place yourself because I have actively gone with people who were amazing, but cost less
Mhm.
because my budget was really tight. And then there's other moments where I've actively pushed for someone that was more expensive because
Yeah.
they were just really great. And so it's really hard to know. You have to go with what you feel comfortable with. And so the advice to go low, go high, it's so personal. And I've had peers, mentors tell me, don't cut yourself short. Don't, go lower. I've heard this person asking this much or that, and it's maybe higher than what I expected. It really depends on you
Mhm.
because you would never want to go so high that you're like, oh, that's probably why they didn't pick me. And
Yeah.
you never want to go so low that you're like, oh my God, I can't pay my bills. I
Yeah.
remember when I was leaving the print studio that we started out with, and I was actively interviewing. I went through and really calculated my budget. Okay, this is my rent. This is how
Mhm.
much I have to pay for my student loans, transportation, food. I did all the math, tried to think of all the things that I need, that I have to spend money for. And I didn't even include, like, I want to go out, go for drinks, any of that,
Right.
but a little cushion. And once I calculated that, and this was like right at the turn of the century in New York City, I realized, okay, I need to make the lowest I can make and survive
Right.
is $28,000 a year, which sounds like nothing. And it
Right.
is. I mean, that was bare
Yeah.
bones, right?
That was bare bones.
Bare bones. And so I remember going into a job, and I'm just gonna say the names, interview for Scholastic books because I majored in illustration, had a lot of illustration experience, even though I had delved into apparel, I was going for it,
Yeah.
mixing it up and trying different art and design career options. And I remember they offered
Wow.
$25,000 a year.
Yeah.
And you know, it felt really good. There were RISD folks there, a lot of alum there. It really felt like I did well with the interview. And I remember going back, and I was interviewing a couple other places too. I remember going back and I was just like, I did the numbers. I can't survive
Mhm.
on that little money. And I went back to them and I said, I am so excited for this potential and I would love to work here, but I did the math and I can't
Yeah.
make less than 28 and survive. what are you gonna do?" And they came back and said, "Okay, we'll get you 28." But I got an offer from Ralph Lauren at the same time. And
Yeah.
so and Ralph Lauren was paying a living salary, which was more than the bare minimum that I would need to survive, and so I went back to them and I said, "Thank you so much for being flexible. I've decided to accept this other offer," and they asked me, "Well, how much are they offering?" And I said, "They're offering 45." And they were blown away, first of all. Of course, took the Ralph Lauren role. I don't know if that helped the next person that was coming in Scholastic or did anything, but
Yeah.
it really came down to what I had to have. And I didn't go to Ralph Lauren with my number, that's what they came to me with, so it was nice that I didn't have to suffer to take
Yeah.
the job.
I mean, I remember those days there was such a huge range of salaries in the fashion industry because when I started the Gap was around that too. I think it was like 42,000 or something like that. And I remember overhearing that my boss was making 350,000.
Yep.
This wasn't even a VP. She was just really sweet lady. She was just basically just picking out the colors that I was putting on the CADs. And I mean, that was the rumor, but she wasn't making $42,000 a year for sure,
No.
as she shouldn't be, if she'd been working for 20 years in the fashion industry. Um, but there was, this kind of like, that's a possibility that's out there. I'm not sure if those salaries exist anymore, and maybe in the larger companies, but it's definitely, you know, because back then there wasn't the tech industry. Just kind of started, and those guys took over the big fat salaries.
Yeah. I remember I had a VP that it was rumored made that much, but he was a VP,
Yeah.
and I was still blown away by that. Um, so I don't know. You hear these rumors, sometimes they're accounting for things like bonuses or options and
Mhm.
total compensation, but it definitely varies, and the folks coming in from the bottom often take really low salaries because 'cause you're just out of school, you have low expenses, no kids,
Yeah.
no, bills per se, big bills. And sometimes it's worth it because getting that really great
Mhm.
brand on your resume, even if it's just for a shorter amount of time, opens a lot of doors for the future for those bigger salaries. All right,
Yeah.
so next question. What was one of your most memorable wins or mistakes? You can kinda go either way.
My most memorable win or mistake. My most memorable mistake, and I use this metaphor often, was a turquoise poncho.
You're getting
and
real
sometimes,
specific.
and sometimes I'll be like, "This is a turquoise poncho situation." So I was doing denim, jackets, knits, wovens, dresses. I was doing it all because I don't say no. I was like, yeah, I can do everything. Just had a line plan and a color palette. And I was just scrambling to put things together. And sometimes things that look really good on a little CAD, on a little tiny drawing, don't look so good when it's like 3D full scale. We're doing all these knit ponchos and we had a color palette and I made one in turquoise. It was like brown, white, and turquoise. Those are my three colors. And it looked super cute on the CAD. Okay. We already had a brown top. We already had a cream top. So I was like, let's put the poncho in turquoise because we're not showcasing our turquoise color. Sample comes in, sales meeting comes in, models walking around with this giant turquoise poncho. And the saleswoman she was really funny. Her name was, I think, Tammy. She was super tan, super blonde, wore a lot of gold. She's like, a turquoise poncho? How am I supposed to sell that? Like, there's been so much talk about this, but it's all been on paper, and the sample didn't even arrive until a few days ago. It didn't even notice that it was like not appropriate for this garment. And
You
I
were like,
still
"It's hideous."
it was hideous, but I couldn't see it hideous because I just was seeing, like, the whole thing and all the work I put into, but someone
Yeah.
seeing it from the outside, seeing that they have to sell it, she was like, "I can't sell a turquoise poncho."
You know what? It was a fail and we all need some fails. I have
Yeah.
a former leader that I worked with at Target for many years and she's gone on to do other roles, but more famously as a CEO of a very well-respected Black magazine. And she talks about her fails as a CEO all the time and how much she learns from them. So fails at the CEO level, fails at the design level. We all learn from them, and I guarantee you'll be never making a blue poncho, turquoise blue poncho again because you've learned.
And I think of it a lot of times when I'm doing a design that it may look really cute, super tiny, on a little drawing, but what it's gonna be like when it's 36 inches wide and on a
This is
body
why
or
we need friends and peers and coworkers that have good
yeah,
eyes that
yeah,
aren't gonna sugarcoat, so then you don't have
sugarcoat
those embarrassing moments in
and
those meetings.
foul mouth, sassy salespeople that really are not seeing it from a design perspective, just pure numbers. A little harsh for the creative soul.
I know, you need those practical folks. So, okay, so if you could collaborate with any artist, living or dead, who would it be?
Mm. He's not my favorite artist, but I find him just fascinating as Joseph Beuys. Am I saying his name the right way?
I think
He's
so.
just so super weird. And and I when I first learned about him, I was like, what's going on here? And then I saw his work recently at the SF MoMA, and I had to really think about all the things that he was thinking to put this thing together. And because his work is all theory based and then he puts it together. And I am the opposite where I'm all just guttural, like, I want this, this, and this. And and so I think it would be nice to be around someone to step back and think about the overall idea as opposed to just the product. So I would like to do that. Of course, I would love to hang out with Frida for a day, um, just to kind of see what she was like, and go from there. I don't know, there's so many. There's so many. Yeah. What about you? What are some artists or designers that you would just love to spend a day with?
I would love to work with I will say I've been lucky because I've had a chance to work with some amazing artists throughout my career, through my partnerships work with Target and other work, but I've always really been fascinated by Kara Walker.
Mhm,
She is amazing and, I have a real passion for cut paper and collage and that silhouette work she does is really moving. The fact that she really delves into history, and I'm a big history and art history fan, I think it'd be really, really cool to work with someone who is so not only talented, but just has such deep concept
mhm.
and thought behind her work. I love the amazing Virgil Abloh, but I don't know. He might be a little too intense for me. And I don't really I'm not like a sneakerhead either, so he might not be
Yeah,
interested. But so living, dead, a little bit of both.
right.
A little bit of
Karen
both.
Walker is the alumni, by the way. So,
Exactly. Shout out to
yeah.
RISD.
Yeah, her piece that she has at the SF MoMA right now, speaking of deep thoughts, deep pockets, that must have cost a gazillion dollars.
Everything costs a gazillion dollars, but hopefully she's getting a gazillion
I
dollars
hope so
too.
too, but it is beautiful. If you're in the Bay Area, go check it out.
What do you hope listeners take away from this season?
I hope that they get to learn about different aspects of the creative industry. I hope that they realize that it is possible, that there are people out there who are earning a living working in the creative field. And so I hope that this podcast sheds some light on that and they laugh and they learn something. So, Tanya, I can be a little bit chaotic. I'm definitely that type B friend. You are more the type A friend. So, I want to hear about the fact maybe like what is your most chaotic creative habit? What is the weird things you do to get creative?
I will say that despite being type A and detail oriented Virgo, Um, I am a procrastinator. I'm not proud of it, but in the end, it's because I'm always trying to make sure the things that I do well and are thoughtful and well done and thorough and, I have my I's dotted and my T's crossed. So sometimes the pressure of that makes me take longer to get started, do other things. Oh, maybe I'll just make a sandwich. Oh, maybe I'll have some gum. Oh, maybe because I'm dragging my feet a little bit to do something difficult.
So you're just a deep thinker. It's not procrastination so much as you're just thinking and thinking and overthinking and making sure it's right.
No, no, I'm dodging. I'm dodging
Okay.
actively, actively trying to think of doing other things. It's instead of doing what I'm supposed to do. But then I get it done. I always get it
Get it
done. It
done.
just maybe takes longer than it should.
Yeah. See, I'm the opposite. I'm like, idea, boom, I'm gonna just go do it. And it's could be a complete failure. I could make a huge mess. I don't think about it. For example, I painted my wall last night.
I
Um,
saw that
I was like,
online.
I'm thinking about Willem de Kooning right now.
Those
Okay.
circles?
Yeah. I was just thinking about him and thinking about his art, and I had a can of paint and a boring wall. And yeah, so I just did it. And I like the way it came out. So that's
Well, that's
good.
good.
Yeah. So it could have gone wrong. I figured I could just paint over it.
Your, Achilles heel? What's the opposite of superpower?
Yeah,
Weakness?
Achilles heel for sure. Yeah.
Okay.
So we were talking about what I hope listeners get from this podcast, but what is something that you hope that listeners get from this podcast?
So we kind of talked about it a little bit earlier, and I really do hope people find some valuable tips. They get inspired, they laugh, they have fun with us, and learn and just get more comfortable with the idea of art and design being viable career options, ways to really live your best life and not struggle, not be on the struggle bus when you're living your best life. Um, so that's what I hope.
The struggle bus. Yeah, I've been there.
I don't wanna be on the struggle bus. It's not a
You
cute
live
bus.
in New York City, like when it's snowing out, the weather's really bad and there's more people on the bus than usual and it passes you by and you gotta wait for the next one, that's like the worst. My kids have no idea. I tell them that all the time. I was like, I'd be standing there at 7:45 in the morning and like 3 buses pass. You don't know what it's like. You don't know the struggle.
We have had a really great time chatting through what it is that we're gonna be doing here, and we have got an incredible lineup coming up from fashion directors, illustrators, community artists, filmmakers, and entrepreneurs.
And in every episode, we're diving into the real talk, the messy middle, the money, and the moments of doubt, and the wins. And yeah, is it all worth it?
So if you're a creative who's tired of pretending that you don't care about money, this podcast is for you.
Because she makes art for the money, and so do we. Because at She Makes Art for the Money, we want you to make money. We also want to make money too. Because at She Makes Art for the Money, we want you to make money, and we want to make some money too.
And watch our podcast.
Yes. Thank you for listening to our podcast, She Makes Art for the Money. Stay tuned for all of our podcasts coming up.
I think we're good.